Hi, Glenys.
Hey, Aaron. What do you want to talk about today?
How much I hate diets.
Yeah, diets suck.
So what do you do instead of a diet?
Intuitive eating. Health at every size.
So how many times have you had to explain intuitive eating and health at every size to someone?
Like 5,000 times. But that was just to my doctor.
Okay, so how many times have you explained it to someone and then they said, but diets are the only thing I know?
That's like every time. Can we pursue health without thinking about weight?
Yes, we can pursue health without thinking about weight.
That's pretty revolutionary, what you just said. But what if you just don't like yourself at the size that you're at?
I think we need to understand why, instead of just saying I need to change.
So, what's the deal with body positivity?
Oh man, that's a long answer. I'm Aaron Flores.
And I'm Glenys Oyston. And we are Dietitians Unplugged. Welcome back to another Dietitians Unplugged podcast episode. Aaron, how are you?
Who is this? Who's calling? Oh, okay. Sorry. Wrong. I'm so used to like random people calling me, you know. It's just I'm actually happy someone I know. Hi, Glenys. What's going on?
I'm not coming up on caller ID.
No, everyone's blocked.
I sent you a text once, and you're like, "Who dis?" And I'm like, "Oh, jerk."
Yeah. Always going for a cheap laugh. I'm sorry.
Well, cheap laughs are the best.
They are
most affordable. So,
Ba-dunch.
So how's it going?
Oh, it's good. It's good. I am excited for this. This episode is just us, and I'm excited to talk about the holidays because I am really looking forward to the holidays this year. I don't know why. I don't usually.
Really?
I usually get like that excited, but for some reason I am. So,
okay.
So I'm excited to talk about the holidays.
I'm always super excited about the holidays.
Yeah. So let me tell you just off the bat why I'm not really into holidays is because, you know, being Jewish and we don't really celebrate Christmas. Sorry, but it's a bit of a nuisance. It's harder to get around. It's harder to go to the mall. It's harder to do a bunch of stuff. And when, you know, you're not really like actively engaged in the holiday, it's sort of like, you're all in my way.
I am always just, I don't like the crowds, but I'm always just super excited for any day off. Like that's my whole thing.
So that's what I'm really excited for too. I would agree. I'm excited for the time off. I'm excited, you know, to like spend some time with my family. I'm really excited because December 20th, The Rise of Skywalker is coming out. And, you know, that's a big deal. New Star Wars movie. So I'm very excited for that.
What's that one about? What is this Star Wars you're talking about?
Yeah, it's a small sort of indie film, you know, very interesting novel concept of good versus bad in space. Yeah, it's only about 8 people have watched it.
Yeah, I too am looking forward to that so that we can finally end the ongoing torture of like, how long is this franchise going on? You know? And
oh my God.
After that, I'm cutting myself off. Like I watched the Han Solo movie, terrible. The Rogue One, terrible. And I know you're like clenching your teeth. They're like, how are we even friends?
I'm quitting. Like we're done. The episode is done.
We can have differences in opinion. But I have enjoyed the main story with A New Hope always being my number one favorite.
Okay.
I had a Princess Leia doll.
Okay, Glenys.
Yeah, well, you know what? Anyway, we're done with that conversation. So
I'm chalking it up to being Canadian.
No, that's not. No. You mean like how Canadians are extra awesome?
Yes.
And have great movie critiques?
Yes.
Yes. So... all right. Well, yes, the holidays are coming, and that's going to be I'm going to go to that, obviously. Not going to be there the first night like you are, but I am definitely going to be there and see it and say goodbye to this beautiful story.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's say not goodbye. Going away, by the way. So it's just get used to it. Like it's going to be going on.
But I'm not going to see anymore.
That's fine.
Yeah, I've really almost never forgiven them for Christian Haydenson or whatever his name was.
Hayden
Like,
Christensen.
Hayden Christensen.
Flip it. Yeah.
Whatever his name is, like, ugh, worst Anakin Skywalker ever. All right. Well, we've tortured everybody long enough with our Star Wars debate. So, what are we talking about today? We are talking about the holidays a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And also just touching on a topic that comes up a lot is emotional eating and spending some time just, sharing our thoughts on that. So, and obviously those two sort of blend within the holidays. So it seems like a good time to bring that up and to see how those intersect and what are the differences and how can, hopefully give you all some tools and insight that might help you feel a little bit more relaxed around this time of year and even more relaxed around emotional eating.
Yes. And I wanted, before we launch into it, I have been meaning to do this because we've both been on a new podcast and people are always asking, hey, what are anti-diet podcasts? And I have been meaning to say this, but we have both been on the podcast, It's Just a Cookie. And I just wanted to give it a shout out. The website is cookierevolution.com. And the podcast is called It's Just a Cookie. And it's another anti-diet podcast out there. And I just wanted to, before we launched in, very quickly, give it a shout out because we want people to hear these resources.
Yeah. No, it's a great episode and fellow Body Trust person.
Yep. And you talk about butter. So
yeah,
it's awesome. Yeah. Okay. So emotional eating. Do you have clients, Aaron, that come in to your practice and are just like, I'm just an emotional eater and that's my problem?
At this point, not that I can think of. No. But there is an emotional aspect to food, but no, there's other things going on, not just that. I would say it's one component, but it's not the only thing.
I have had people come in recently, in the last 6 months, they're like, I'm just an emotional eater and that's my problem. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's take a look at what's going on. And when we delve down, that is not what's going on at all. It's people are literally starving themselves all day and are starving by the end of the night because that's always when their emotional eating seems to happen.
Sure.
So there's just something out there where people are like, I'm an emotional eater. And it's like, what I think they're almost saying is like, there's something wrong with me that I can't restrict all day and then keep restricting all night. Like, I think that's how it gets translated if they had the knowledge.
Yeah. And the one or two times where someone really did just identify just emotional eating as the issue, I agree that there was something underlying that was going on, and it wasn't like maybe a diagnosable eating disorder, like if you look at the criteria, but it was definitely some long-standing trouble around food and lack of sort of ability to eat in a way like you said, where it's not sustainable throughout the whole day, and it's usually sort of creeping up at night where there's just not enough food that's been consumed, and now there's some really intense hunger along with some emotion, and now they're off to the races.
Right. And we don't know. So maybe there is emotional eating going on, right? Like maybe that's a thing where it's like I'm having deep, dark feelings and I cope with them with food so I don't have to feel them. But we don't know to what extent that eating is happening if somebody is in deprivation mode.
Yeah. How about this? Like, without going on Google, right? We're just going to sort of pick our brains, right? And just sort of based on our experience, like what would you think would be components of a definition of emotional eating?
If it was just emotional eating?
Yeah. Or just like, how would you sort of like classify it? How would you define it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So to me, if I could separate out the deprivation part of it, say somebody was getting 3 full and satisfying meals a day, but for whatever reason, they're not hungry, but they need to keep eating, and it's not based in shame around their body, then I would say like it's strictly like a negative emotion comes across. Mm-hmm. And then the reaction is automatically to reach for food in absence of hunger. And I would say, like, if there's body shame attached to it, then I'm not even sure I would qualify that as fully emotional eating because, again, I think that comes down to a deprivation driven eating like that. I have body shame. I shouldn't be eating as much as I'm eating because then I won't lose weight or I'll stay the same size. And so I consider that kind of deprivation eating. So I would say like emotional eating would be like strictly like you're well fed and you feel good about food, but you still overeat on food in absence of hunger when, negative emotions come around. I don't know. That's just kind of like spitballing right there.
Yeah.
But what would you say?
I would actually broaden it a little bit, and I would say, because, and here's why. I feel like one of the things we need to make space for, or at least I would like to make space for, is that emotional eating is not all bad. And that it can be, we see it often as a negative thing, but I think, there can be emotional eating in good situations, right? In places where we're really happy or really enjoying something. And food should be emotional, right? Food should elicit some emotion from us. So I'm going to say my definition is emotional eating is when your eating is really connected to maybe more of a feeling, right? Whether it's a coping tool or to like enhance a good feeling, but it's really not driven by like I would agree with you. It's not driven as much by hunger and fullness. It might start there and there might be parts of it, but part of why we're eating, right, is to really enhance or soothe an emotion.
Yeah, I like that. That is why in this kind of gray area that we're kind of making up as we go is like, this is why I don't even like the term emotional eating when people come to me and describe it as like, this is my problem, and I want to fix my emotional eating because I'm like, well, like you said, like we never eat without emotions. Right. So, so is it a problem? Like, how is it a problem? And so I want them to always tell me more about how this is a problem for you and why it feels like a problem. But I am going to say that I have yet to meet the client who is, will call themselves an emotional eater, but hasn't somehow been touched by diet culture and deprivation. So this is why it's so, like, to me, it's like, is it emotional eating that's the problem, or is it starvation or restriction or guilt? Even not like physical restriction, but emotional restriction around food. And so, let's give it the name that people are comfortable with, whatever people want to call it, I'm happy with. But that's when I was like, is it emotional eating? Is that the problem? But I agree, because sometimes we eat like, again, I think maybe we've even mentioned this on podcast. No, the image of the sad, brokenhearted, thin girl on the bed, and she's just broken up with somebody and she's eating the ice cream. And it's usually a comedy trope. And nobody is like, that's terrible. She shouldn't, right? Now, switch the bodies out, put a larger bodied person in, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, you can't eat emotionally, right? Yeah. So that's where it's like, is it ever disconnected from body size? I wonder.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an important lens to bring into this for sure. Is that it's probably not allowed if depending on your body size and how and weight stigma and things like that. I think and like you alluded to, I think most people are thinking of this word as a negative thing, right? As a way that food is their soothing tool for some feelings, and I think it's why, to me, I think it's also a very accessible word. I don't think there's a lot of stigma around it, and when people see someone on TV like eating the ice cream because they're sad, or we've had personal experiences, right? We've grown up and we hurt we skinned our knee and we were given a cookie, or it's sort of culturally acceptable to emotionally eat. And it's probably more acceptable to do that than have an eating disorder or have disordered eating. So I think it's a very accessible term to a lot of people. And so I think if we were to, look at how many hits does emotional eating get, right, on Google compared to some others, I bet you would be pretty high.
Yeah. And I want to add another layer to it too, where I'm thinking suddenly, as you were talking, I started thinking about my grandmother who really communicated love with food. And I think struggled to communicate it in other ways genuinely, but she really just wanted to feed you up like large amounts of food. And I'm also thinking of my mother, who also learned that, both of them dieters.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was some emotion there too, where it was like, food is love for me for a long time. Like, vast amounts of food, it represents love to me, I think. And so there's another kind of component of emotional eating where family members or loved ones are communicating through food. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And even, if we look at probably like the historical trauma of families or how families were raised, whether that was through the Depression or were there times of food scarcity, right? I mean, abundance of food at a family event might be really tied to the family's history going back, 20, 30, 100 years or so, or even more. And that's something that I definitely connect with too. I mean, like my family, it doesn't seem like it's a holiday meal, whatever holiday it is, or even a birthday, unless there's like leftovers. Like it's good. Like there's going to be enough where you're going to have to take food home. It's not even a question. Like, we're just going to make more than what you think. And it's very interesting because when we have people over, like I do the same thing. I always have too much food. Like, and it's a comfort factor for me. Like, I feel like I have very high anxiety that people are going to like run out of food at my house when they're eating.
Yeah, I have that too, actually, because I personally think there's nothing worse than going someplace and you were expecting somehow there's a miscommunication. You're expecting to get fed and there's no food and you're like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
So, and it's like, this just wasn't clearly communicated. Oopsie. And so my way of dealing with that is like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to make sure there's tons of food when people come. But, I again, that's me showing that I care to feed people. And I was thinking too, when we were talking about leftovers, like I've had dinner with my Persian friends a few times and they always have like an abundance of food. And they're like, oh, you think this is wild? Like when we go home to Iran, there's so much food. And if you don't eat it all or you don't keep eating, inevitably someone's aunt will come up to you and say, oh, don't you like the food?
Right.
Right? So again, you eating my food expresses love.
Right.
So again, emotion, right? So maybe this idea of emotional eating being such a bad thing, and I know we've talked about that in past episodes, but we really wanted to deep dive into like this idea of emotional eating, and maybe it's not such a bad thing.
Right. Well, and like I think I so love the story you told of people going back to to Iran and their family, and that happens here as well, right? And when people see their family members and they're like, oh, you didn't like the so-and-so I made because you only had like, half of the whole casserole dish. You should have had the whole casserole dish. And that's how I know that you really love me. I think that happens here a lot,
right.
And especially probably during the holidays.
And now I'm thinking in terms of like going home and like when I go back to Toronto, where I lived for many years and have really good friends there, and we always have like somebody, a group of us over and they feed us and like, so much food. And I can tell you that the only time that was problematic for me was when I was dieting. And all I could think was, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to stick to my restriction because first of all, I'm hungry. And second of all, like it's going to look really rude if I don't have something, but it was more a thing of I want it, but I feel like I shouldn't have it. And then inevitably I would overeat because I was, starving. And that's the only time I thought, well, this is like an emotional eating that's a problem for me. But I really perceived it more as my own personal problem of not being able to maintain my restriction forever. But now I can go back and be like, yeah, we're going to put the feed bag on and it's going to be fun. We're going to drink too much. And, it's going to be, not that I'm recommending to drink too much for people, but, it's
no,
like,
I understand what you're saying.
It's just a fun. It's just a fun, relaxed time. And now I don't worry, like, okay, so I'm going to be a little bit uncomfortably full maybe because I'm not going to be paying full attention. I'm going to be, and now it's not a problem. And I can tell you it really enhances that emotional eating part now, right? Like the eating is now a happy emotion because I know I can get enough and it's okay if I'm going to eat a little too much too.
No, it reminds me of my my early career and working with you at the VA and running, a weight loss program, and especially this time of year, there were groups, right, about like how to like maintain like your goals during the holidays, right? And so much of it was exactly what you said, like the fear of all of these things because of the restriction, right? The fear of being around so much food because, you've been restricting for X amount of days or months or years, and you're trying to maintain it, and you're so worried about having more food than what you're used to, and food that's yummy and food that like is enjoyable, and you're like, well, how am I going to like keep my restriction in place during, this one meal, right? Or this family trip. When in reality, if we just sit back, enjoy ourselves and enjoy the holiday and enjoy our family, we actually like really might be present much more and not worry about the food as much. That worrying makes us really sort of disengage from a lot of the fun that we could have during the holiday.
Absolutely. And you're reminding me too of like your weight loss groups and also like Weight Watchers, where I sat in any number of Christmases, like, or holiday seasons. And it was just like people talking about sort of like the Jewish holidays and then like, Christmas, and everybody had their holidays and everybody was like, but it's all attached to food and I can't handle it. And how am I going to get through it? And then there would be the other set of people who are like, fuck it, it's Christmas. Like, we're going to just eat whatever and worry about it in January. And it would just be like this crazy confessional, like multi-religion confessional of like, we can't handle the food. And then the pious leader up at the front just talking about like, well, you can do that, like eat an apple before you go out to a party so you're full. It's like, oh, come on. Seriously? Like an apple's not going to do it. I'm starving here.
Yeah.
So just the stress level that people were going through and feeling really sad in these groups. And I'm thinking now like, oh, what a terrible way to spend holidays, right? Like worrying and being sad and that, so it's just, it was so, to me, it was so evil now looking back on it.
Yeah.
Like,
I
diet culture ruining our holidays.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because, aside from, spending time with family, I do love Thanksgiving, and I love the meal, like the Thanksgiving meal. It's one of my favorite meals. And I was talking with someone about it, and it was so interesting because for a few years I had like 3 out of 4 years for a while, like I could not make Thanksgiving. Either my kids were sick or I was sick or something was going on where like we didn't have Thanksgiving, or I didn't have Thanksgiving. And I remember really missing out. And I remember one of those years, it was like right after, and it was maybe like 4 days after. And I was like, we're going out to dinner someplace where I can get like a turkey dinner. Like, I don't care where it is, but like, I want like the Blue Plate special. I want the turkey dinner because I'm not getting it. And I thought like, because I like that meal so much, like, what if I give myself permission to have it more often? Like, does it really just have to be once a year? Like, what if I made a turkey more often? What if I made stuffing more often? What if these foods were like actually around more? Because I do like them. Like, it's such an interesting mindset that we get into, that like we can only have this food associated with this holiday. But like, if you really like it, can't we give ourselves permission to have it more often?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's funny because we, there's just the two of us here and we don't make, I'm just not going to make a turkey generally. And we like to stay in. So we made pizza on Thanksgiving.
Oh my God, I love that.
Which is like not, yeah, but we've done that for years and we always just eat as much as we want of the pizza. But you're right, because I also love a good turkey Thanksgiving dinner. And so, yeah, I like when I go to the diner down the street, like in the middle of summer, I'll get their turkey plate.
Yeah.
That's basically a Thanksgiving dinner. And I'm like in heaven because it's like, oh, I'm not going to probably have this on Thanksgiving Day. So this is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, why are we confining that food to only one time a year? And it just becomes like this super special thing. But then I also hear a lot of people say, like, I don't even like turkey. I don't even know why we're eating this kind of thing. Like, yeah, like that's why we eat pizza here. So yeah, also because we're weirdos. But yeah, just have that. But the stuffing is the best. So like, why only once a year?
Right. I don't know. It's very interesting. And I think, obviously we can't hit every scenario out there, right? There's just so many things that are going to come up around the holidays. But I just also want to think about the folks who are going to their holiday meals and really dreading being around family for a lot of different reasons. But like part of it could be, family trauma history, but also a lot of diet talk and things like that are very troubling. And I think it's also appropriate to understand like, hey, I might emotionally eat during this family meal, or if I'm with family for the weekend or more, because they're getting to me. Like this is how I'm going to like sort of use food as my coping. And what I tell folks when it comes to that is like, there are also a lot of other coping tools, like give all of them equal value, and see which ones work in the moment. And sometimes food is going to work, and that's okay, because you're also considering other things.
Right. And when this becomes problematic, because I'm imagining sort of maybe the skeptic saying, well, are you just saying that overeating or emotional eating is never a problem? It's like, well, no, you can be the judge of that for yourself, right? This is a definition that only the individual can know for themselves, which is like once it becomes uncomfortable regularly, then you kind of know, oh, maybe this is when it's become a problem, or when it's like this is my only way of coping with my family or whatever's going on.
Exactly. I would say like if this is the only tool you're using to cope, right? Then let's figure out some other things that you can try. But I think to sort of say I'm never going to emotionally eat, I think sets us up for a very like dull, muted way of thinking around food. Like I want food to be really pleasurable, and the catchphrase I'm using a lot right now is like I want folks to eat with like full Technicolor brilliance. Like I want food to be emotional. I want food to like be really exciting and flavorful and yummy and elicit positive responses and for us to be present with it.
Dude, did you make that up?
Yeah.
Full Technicolor brilliance. I love that. Totally stealing it. It's mine now.
No, so I have another person who's trying to steal it. I go, yeah, but you don't know how I came up with it. Like I have a really good story about how I came up with it.
Like a Star Wars related?
If it is, I'm not going to tell you because you'll just poo-poo it.
I like Star Wars. Anyway,
it's from the West
that's
Wing.
A great phrase.
Glenys. It's from the West Wing.
Oh, okay. Oh,
just kidding.
Yes, that fantastic show I've never seen. We are like on opposite ends of the pop culture spectrum, but I appreciate that you're on the pop culture spectrum with me. So that's
barely,
what I really like.
Barely.
Like I want to argue about this stuff with people. So, full Technicolor brilliance. That is how we want people to eat. Yeah, I love that. And I want to take a moment to talk about how much overeating is shamed in the press during this season. I feel like there's so many, you start to see articles of like, Americans gain X number of pounds through the holiday seasons and they never take it off. I'm like, first of all, how do you know that? Second of all, oh my God, who cares? And third of all, like, I just think it puts so much shame on overeating, as though we're never supposed to overeat. And the reality is that overeating is just sometimes a thing that happens, and it's okay. And your body can make up for those occasional errors in judgment. And I say almost like somewhat frequent errors, like at least once a week, I'm like, oops, ate too much of that. But my weight stays stable. And it's like, well, whatever, my body makes up for it the next day. Maybe I'm not as hungry. And I just want to do some work around normalizing overeating, because I think people get so upset by this idea that they might overeat even once.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. Like we don't give ourselves very much leeway, right, for being able to sort of navigate food and like we're always expected to eat the same amount every time. And that just doesn't happen, especially during the holidays.
Right. And given that, like, hunger and fullness aren't these static things that are the same every day, right? So our body can make up for the difference in, oh, I ate a lot the day before. Actually, I remember a few years ago when I first met up with our friend Lauren Anton, and it was like, I want to say it was like the weekend after Thanksgiving, and we were both looking at each other like, we have eaten so much food. What's the salad? And I never get salad for lunch, but that day I was like, I just need a salad.
Yeah.
And our bodies were telling us like, hey, you've had a lot of food and that's okay. And here's how my body adjusts. And it's not me going, I have to have a salad because I'm making up for calories. It was like, no, I truly feel like something very light and green and crisp and kind of citrusy, and it was just like this craving. And we were both laughing and saying, isn't body trust a wonderful thing? So just this idea that we can never recover from overeating episodes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like our bodies are amazing, machines essentially that figure all this stuff out for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what we, come home to, right? Is that, our bodies can sort this stuff out when we get out of the way. And the real key is that to put the holidays in perspective, right? They happen for a brief time of the year. It's not every day, and just enjoy them and try not to, overthink it too much.
Yeah. Don't mind fuck yourself.
Ever.
Ever. And especially notice that it can come up during the holiday season.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to sort of include the last few minutes of this podcast. We mentioned you've been doing a lot of flying, and a lot of people will be flying. And that is a genuine fear that many of our clients have, that I'm too big to fly.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to sort of, see if you had any tips or just see what in general we can offer to make that a little easier on people. So,
because I've been doing so much traveling, I feel like I have come up with a few resources, and some of these are also. It's funny. I was doing some of these, and then Jess Baker, who is on Instagram as the Militant Baker, did a great Instagram story, and it might just be pinned about flying well fat. And it's funny, we have a lot of the same things that we do as sort of flyers. That was really interesting. So the first thing is, depending on your body size, most airlines have a policy. And it's going to be their language that they use is a person of size policy. And it varies some, but basically if you need a seatbelt extender and the armrest can't move down, or you like sort of spill, your body size goes into the other seat by like a couple inches, you qualify for these policies. They're not usually very good, to be honest. Most of them will force you to buy a couple seats, or will allow you, some will refund you. Some airlines will refund you like the extra seat cost if it's not a full flight. I think Southwest Airlines has like probably the best one where
That's what I've heard.
Where they will actually like you can do it and they will not overbook the flight. They'll sort of keep the seat, but you need to end up paying for the seat, I think. Here's the interesting thing. I asked about it because I need a seatbelt extender when I fly at this point. And I asked Southwest the last time I flew, and she looked at me and she said, well, can you put the armrest down? And I said, yes, I can put the armrest down. That's not a problem. She goes, well, you don't qualify. You're not big enough for the policy. And I was like, okay.
Wait,
so
to get a seatbelt extender?
No. To get the person of size, like to buy a second seat and just say, I'm going to have two seats on this flight, right? They wouldn't refund that second seat because I'm not technically big enough because the armrest goes down. So there are these weird policies in place. So, but here's what I do, right? Is I'm also like an anxious flyer. Like I just don't turbulence bothers me. I sit in literally almost the same seat every time. And it's usually up near the front, and it's usually on the same side. And I like a window seat because I can sort of move over. I have a little bit of extra space into the curvature of the plane where I can sort of lean. Some people like the aisle, but I don't, because people tend to walk by the aisle a lot. And then they bump me. So I like the window for that. There's a website called seatguru.com, which looks at all of, you can look at your flight that you want to book, and you can look at what are the most accommodating seats on that actual flight. And it's really cool because, most seats are like 17 and a half inches wide, but if you can find some that are like 18 or 18 and a half, it actually makes a big difference. So Seat Guru is amazing. And it sort of gives you idea for leg room as well. And listen, the other thing is, and I'm going to say this and people are going to be like, well, I can't do that. And I know that there's a lot of privilege in this, is I really fly Comfort Plus or like Economy Plus or whatever they call it, depending on the airline, whenever possible. Because that little bit of extra legroom also adds a little bit of extra width. And I usually don't need a seatbelt extender for those seats. So when possible, I try to upgrade to those seats. And I've actually upgraded to first class on some flights because I wasn't going to fly, in a normal size seat. And again, I know that there's a lot of privilege with that, and that's not accessible, but it's really sort of saved me in a lot of ways. So the other thing is, like when I get on the plane, like the first thing I say is like, I'm probably going to need a seatbelt extender, and they're super nice to give it to me. I've never had anyone like I felt shame about asking for it. Like they're like, okay, here you go. And I give it to them at the end, and they're like, thank you. And that's it. And we move on. And, if you are anxious flyer, I think researching planes that maybe like have more seats might be helpful. Or like wider body planes, maybe even newer planes might have wider seats. I don't know. But I think, you can do some pretty deep dives into like the type of aircraft, what's the configuration of that aircraft, and where are going to be the most comfortable seats.
Yeah. And it's frustrating to me that these airlines are just refusing to acknowledge that bodies come in different shapes and sizes. And why not just make a few extra larger seats, right? Like, is this really going to hit your bottom line that hard? Like if you're missing a couple of spaces in your plane and that tanks your airline, like, did you have a good business model to begin with? So to me, it's frustrating that, we know this is a problem for people. Why can't these airlines make a few larger seats that they can hold for people who are actually larger versus somebody who just wants a nice, large, comfy seat, right? But it just seems like there are solutions that could be undertaken by these airlines that, refuse to do so.
Yeah.
And that makes me angry.
And here's the one tip that one of the flight attendants told me when I was flying Southwest, because Southwest is, you sort of fly wherever, you sit wherever you can, is don't sit in like the last one or two rows of a plane, because the actual curvature, like where it like curves back into like the tail, the seats tend to be a little bit narrower there. So don't like choose the last two or three rows, because they're usually a little bit sort of the plane is starting to narrow there, just slightly.
Oh my God. I always get stuck back there. No wonder I'm so uncomfortable. You've totally named it.
So it's usually like the last two rows of the plane.
And talking about the seatbelt extender, I know I've heard sort of second and third hand that on occasion those have not been available to people, just like maybe they're out of them or other people who've used them. You can also buy your own seatbelt extender, is my understanding. And I have had one client do that, and that was helpful for easing anxiety.
Yeah, but I've also heard that like TSA could take it, right? And airlines really do not want you to use it. So they're going to really pay attention to that, because they it's like, I don't know, they frown against that. And also you can't sit in an exit row if you use a seatbelt extender.
I was just rendered speechless by that, but okay. I'm assuming there's some sort of safety policy around that or something, but I mean, it seems like you have more buttons to get yourself out of the seatbelt faster. So I don't know, but yeah, well, that's interesting. I didn't know. So that's good to know that's something that's maybe being taken away as an option. I have had one client who has successfully done that.
Yeah.
Didn't need to use her seatbelt extender, but it eased her anxiety around. She didn't want to have to ask about it. So, but now,
totally.
Okay, well, be prepared. Geez. Like, why would TSA take away seatbelt extenders? I don't understand it.
I just remember like reading Your Fat Friend's Twitter feed at one point, and they were like, talking about their recent flying experience, and that was something that they're like, oh, it was a good day. Like, no one took away my, seatbelt extender.
And is there any advantage to having something like a TSA pre-check or anything like that, or you have something different?
I don't have TSA. I need to get that. That's probably one of the things that I need to suck up and do. It definitely saves you because you don't get it saves you time in getting through. And I know a lot of like sometimes in some of the clothes I wear, especially around my abdomen and my stomach, they'll want to like touch a little bit more. So TSA might help with that, TSA pre-check, because you go through a different kind of scanner, I think, but I could be wrong.
And you don't have to take your shoes off.
You don't have to take your shoes off,
I think you don't have to get nearly as naked, which is why I'm signing up for it next week.
Well, again, I splurged. I got Clear, which is those where you like sort of use your fingerprints or a retinal scan, and that saves me a ton of time. And I like it. So
it's too futuristic for me. Keep my retinas to myself.
You don't actually give them the retina.
Yeah, too much data flying around out there. But that's, if that saves you time and it's, something you want to do, then that is definitely worth it, probably. The pre-check is $80 or something for 5 years.
Right.
So here's hoping it will save, me from having to get half naked, what I call half naked, taking my shoes off, and like having to take like sweaters off and the belt's coming off, and it just drives me crazy. It's just such a weird, dehumanizing process, I feel. Yeah. And I'm hoping that it, I'll let people know as I fly next year, how it goes, if it's worth it or not. So, so I wish we had better solutions. I wish we had like, real like, hey, this doesn't have to be a problem at all. And unfortunately, right now we don't, other than let's keep making noise at the airlines. Because that, I think, was, I'm thinking Ragen Chastain did a lot of activism around this, and Southwest has definitely changed some of their policies. And I have heard that they're sort of among the best with their policies for people in larger bodies. So, so all we can do is keep making noise and as much as possible.
Yeah, for sure.
So, well, it was a good episode. It was nice just to chat with you and catch up and like, talk about these things that come up for us in our practices and in our lives and other people's lives.
Absolutely. And enjoy the pizza on Thanksgiving. It saved me a slice.
Thanks. Well, we're going away, so I don't know what we're going to eat now. So we'll see. We're just drive a couple hours, and I'm already panicking because I don't know where we're going to eat. So I need to like do some research. I can just imagine me at like Pizza Hut, which actually isn't too bad because I like Pizza Hut, but like somewhere like I don't like Domino's. So we're like at a Domino's somewhere like this is our Thanksgiving. Like, like I wanted a big, delicious feast. Not putting Domino's down, but it's not my thing. So anyway, so I got to research that.
All right.
And I hope you enjoy Thanksgiving and you aren't thwarted from your dinner this year.
Thank you. Yes, hopefully everything will be going well.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, see you next time.
Thanks everyone.